right, everybody. So you are going to draw the still life photograph that you took. So a still life is just objects that are inanimate. So they're not moving objects. And you selected objects that kind of represented things that represented you in a sense. So you're looking at that photo, keep it handy, or look at the objects themselves, and you're beginning to draw your objects onto your paper. Now I started with like that table line that's behind the little sloth. So you can start with the table line if you have one on your picture, but it's up to you. And then I'm kind of using that to help me measure visually and see how big that sloth is in comparison. So it comes up a little bit higher than the table line, and then there's the head, drawing kind of the outlines for the arms. Notice I'm not getting all the little details. I'm going to kind of map out the picture first. That's what you want to do when you start an artwork. Don't get into all the nitty-gritty details quite yet. You just kind of start with a general outline, kind of mapping out where your object is on the paper first. I think I do a couple of details and then I move on to the next object, which for me is the paintbrush. Again, you're drawing what your objects are in your photo. Feel free to bring the objects in if you want to work from life too. Lightly outlining the paintbrush, coming down towards the bottom of the paper, and I'm using the negative space exercises that we did to help me gauge how big the paintbrush is on the paper. If you notice, I'm measuring visually how much space is between the sloth and the brush. How much space the paintbrush takes up in comparison to the whole paper. And then I'm drawing my second brush on there. Again, just kind of lightly outlining, turn the paper if you need to. Now remember, this remote assignment is a sketch. Some of you drew it in class, so you're going to be kind of doing the next part, which is shading the objects. Some of you did not get a chance, cohort A specifically, did not get a chance to draw the objects quite yet. So this is what you'll do, cohort A, kind of map it out first. And cohort B, just bear with me and we will start the shading demonstration in a second. Now, when I'm drawing this object, it's like kind of a paint, watercolor paint pod, and I'm having trouble kind of seeing the side, so I made the photo bigger so I could kind of draw it more accurately. Feel free to zoom into your photo so you can really get close to those objects to draw them as accurately as possible. Now you'll start to see these outlines a little more clearly once I start shading them. I'm using a HB pencil to start. Actually, I think this is a 2H. You guys, I believe, have an HB pencil. That's lighter than a 2B or a B or 4B. So work with your lighter pencil to kind of sketch first. And then I'm drawing my last little watercolor piece. Notice that my objects take up the entire paper. That's what I'm looking for the composition of this. Your objects should really fill that paper. And if they don't, you're drawing too small. You have to try again. Really fill the composition with the layout. I'm putting a few details in of like the paint brush bristles. And notice if it's a curved object, every line on that curved object should curve around it. So the metal that I'm drawing for those paintbrushes kind of curve around the paintbrush. All right, and then this last little excerpt demonstrates how to shade using value. So I did a little bit in advance. Any object that's 3D, that's round, the outsides, if you shade and leave the center a little bit lighter, it will appear a little bit more round. So on the legs of the sloth, I'm shading the sides, and then I'm leaving the middle of the leg a little bit lighter. So I'm shading. The left side I did already. Shading first with my pencil. Again, I'm using a B or a 2B. Shading the sides of the arm, and then I'm going in with my little tortillon, and I'm just kind of blurring the value together so it blends slowly from this dark to the lighter value in the middle. In the arm on the sloth, there's a little shadow inside of that arm and underneath the arm. Any time there's an area that's underneath an object, like the belly is underneath the arm, you would want to shade it with a darker value so that the arm appears on top of that, the legs or the belly. On the paintbrush, I kind of shaded the sides of it, and then I'm going in with my little tortillon and I'm kind of blurring and blending the sides. And then I'm going to go in with my eraser and I'm going to pull up a highlight in the middle. And that makes it appear a little bit more round, having a highlight in the center. So I'm not going to do every object, but I think I do one last little detail before I wrap up the video, which is putting a shadow underneath the object. That really grounds your object by putting a shadow underneath it. So I'm going to go in with my darkest pencil, a 2B or a 4B if you have either of those. And I'm going to put the darkest value in. So I got my object to really look at it to see where the shadow was underneath it. So you're welcome to do the same to work from life if it helps you. Just putting this dark shadow underneath the sloth or whatever your objects are, putting a dark shadow underneath it where you see a shadow on the paper or on the table. Put that shadow in and it'll make it look a little more three-dimensional. Same with the paintbrush. It lifts off of the table. So my shadow for the paintbrush kind of moves away from the paintbrush itself. And shadows don't have to be super dark. Just draw what you're seeing in your photo. As the shadow moves away from the paintbrush, it gets a little bit lighter. I'm using my tortillon. Feel free to use your pencil too. And when you're ready, you're going to do that. Draw it if you have not already, and then shade your sketch in your sketchbook. Upload your work when you're done.